It's about to get lit. English lit. Hello, my name is Jack Edwards and welcome to what is quite possibly my most requested video of all time. You may know, if you've been following this channel for a little while, that last year I took my A-level exams and I came out with 3 A stars, one of them being in English literature. I'm now studying English at the University of Durham, which is the top English department in the UK, so hopefully I am well equipped to give you kind of some tips and some tricks and hacks as to how to potentially get an A star in your English literature A-level. For the sake of your sanity, I'm going to be dividing this video up into sections, so I'm going to be doing general tips, revision, essay writing, and then I'm going to speak a little bit about unseen extracts. So I'm going to pop the times up for those different sections here in case you want to skip ahead. But if you're still here, that means that you want to listen to some general tips from me. So let's get started. My first tip for any revision is to make a plan. Revising content for an exam can seem like an absolutely mammoth task, a mountain to climb, and it just doesn't need to be that way, and you can divide it up into tiny little chunks and tick things off as you go, and you feel so much more productive by doing things like that. So when I was revising for my A-level, I tried to do a 1 week per text, and by doing a whole week's worth of varied revision on one text and just focusing completely on one text for that time, I think makes sure it stimulates ideas a bit better because you're in that headspace to be thinking specifically within the boundaries of that text. Obviously you can still mix that up, so you can do lots of different styles of revision, but just focusing on one particular text for the whole week I think just makes it a lot easier. You come up with better ideas, and then in the week or two coming up to the exam, that's when you start to revise everything all in one go and kind of cram a little bit. My next general tip is that over the year or two that you're studying your A-levels, you should read each text 4 or 5 times. I know that seems like a lot, but so if you read it once before you start studying it, you then read it again in class as you study it, you then read it once more after that, and then maybe again as you're revising, that's 4 times, that's 4 cover-to-cover reads of the text. I think one of my English teachers once said to me that you can only fully appreciate and understand a text once you've read it 4 times. So that's what I would recommend. Also, try to look at other versions of the text. For example, a film adaptation. Now that seems like a lot of fun, and it can be, but just seeing it visually, I think, is like a rereading. It's, you know, you get to see all of the things, the sequence of events. Actually, this is the story from my real A-level exam. We had to analyse, in Othello by Shakespeare, this extract, and I had watched the film version of Othello the day before, and it's this scene with Othello and Desdemona, and I remember watching in the film and seeing that Emilia was still on the stage, and I was like, oh, that's interesting that Emilia is still on the stage. So I checked in my copy of the play, and she was in the original version too, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I'd never noticed that before, that she was on the stage. And sometimes when you're reading a text, you kind of forget what else is going on at the same time, but seeing a visual version of the play, I think you can almost visualize it then in your head as you read it. So when I read that extract, immediately I thought Emilia is on the stage, and so I wrote a whole paragraph on that in my essay, and I felt like that was quite a unique point that maybe not everyone would have thought of, and so it really does help. So that's my evidence, that's me corroborating the fact that watching films does help. Also, read as many critics as you possibly can, so critical articles, listen to what other people in your class think, listen to what your teacher says. I think that reading other people's perspectives really helps you to actually come to terms with what your own perspective is, and so the wider variety of things that you can come into contact with is the better. Also, class discussion is one of the most valuable resources you will have. So if you have an idea in class, do not be afraid to put your hand up. The worst thing that's going to happen is your teacher is going to be like, I don't think so. And like, you've lost nothing from that. Putting forward your ideas is interesting, and sometimes you come up with the most bizarre idea and then your teacher's like, that is incredible, I never thought of it like that. And you know, that's the way that you kind of validate your ideas and grow more confident in the things that you think about text. If you are too shy to speak in front of the whole class, or you're like, this idea is a little bit rogue, this might be a bit far-fetched, email your teacher. You know, that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. So don't worry and think, oh god, they're gonna judge me, I'm stupid. Like, no, they want to hear your ideas, and they'll be just excited that you want to learn as much as they want to teach. Also, it's really important to revise the kind of established critical theories and critical approaches to all literature. So for example, feminist theory, post-colonial, Marxist, you know, all of those things. And then learn the key words as well. So, you know, reification in Marxism just sounds impressive. Androcentrism in feminism, you know, the big technical words that have really simple meanings, but at the same time they also prove that you fully understand a concept, that you've revised and researched a concept. I think all in all, your examiner is going to be impressed if you use those technical terms and technical vocabulary, as long as you know what they mean. Don't make your language too ornate. If it's inappropriate, you know, remember that this is an exam, and you should only use words that you 100% know the meaning of. That's one of the complexities of the English language, is that there are so many different words, but they all have such specific meanings, and if you use a really complicated and over-exaggerated word that isn't necessary at all, you're going to look like an idiot, and that's worse than just using normal vocabulary. You can get your point across much more concisely and you know, exactly how you mean it if you use the words that you thought of it with. So that would be one of my tips, is try to expand your vocabulary, but don't force it. Okay, so now we are moving on to the revision part of the video. If you've just joined us because you skipped ahead, welcome to the fun train. Next stop, A star. I hate myself too. So the first thing that I came to do, which might sound a little bit daunting, this is the first thing I did when I first started revising for my A-levels, was I went through each text with a notebook and wrote down absolutely everything that came into my head as I read through it. So for example, here is my copy of The Handmaid's Tale. I went through this cover to cover. I wrote down all of the quotes that I thought were interesting, and all of the ideas that I had, and all the things I could remember. Chapter by chapter, I made little like subheadings within the notes and just bullet pointed everything that came to mind. I'll put a close-up of the book, but basically, if you can see, I've kind of underlined all of the important bits. I've added little notes and annotations in there too. I even looked at the epigraphs and things like that, you know, the names of the different chapters. That's quite an important thing that's structurally quite important. Yeah, so this book is absolutely knackered because I've just worn it to death, but I really love this book. And then what I did after that was I looked through the notes that I'd made, and I made a quote bank. So I made a big table in a Word document, and set mini headings, so themes of violence or women's rights and things like that. And then I also made one for different characters. So I had one for themes and one for characters, and then I'd go through and put each quote into the different word banks under the different categories. And if I got to one and I was like, actually I've got one that's quite similar to that and it's not that versatile, then I just cut it out because I knew that I'd never remember it. But by making a quote bank, you can reduce a whole text like this into 3-4 A4 pages, and it just makes it a lot more manageable. Then with the quote bank, I looked at every single one and I thought, right, which of these quotes are the most versatile? Which ones can cover multiple themes? Can I bring up in every single essay I ever write about this text? And I highlight them, and then I put them into Quizlet. Now Quizlet is a website where you can make revision notes for yourself, so they can make them into kind of flashcards. There are loads of different games. I'd put either half the quote on one side of the flashcard and the other half on the other side, or make one side of the card say quote about women's rights, and then on the other side it would have the quote. So it was one of those ways. That's how I learned quotes as well, the really important ones that were quite versatile. And also, learning quotes that are versatile is really, really important, because you cannot learn every single quote. There's no way you're going to learn all of that. So learning the quotes, you have to play the game a little bit, I think. So learning the quotes that are going to be most useful in your arsenal of knowledge, those are the ones that you need to get up here. Other ways of memorizing quotes without using Quizlet or online resources, I've got these like flashcards on rings. These are quite useful, or you can get bigger ones, but these are quite good for learning like key widgets of information and that kind of thing. Some ways I used flashcards was that I'd get my mum to read out the first half of a quote and then I'd finish it. That helped to kind of learn them. But one way that you can do it when you don't have another human to help you is if you write down half the quote on one side of a flashcard and the other half on the other, and then line your stairs with flashcards. And so every time you go up or down the steps, you have to get all of them right before you can go up the next step, if that makes sense. So you get to the first step, you have to get the first flashcard right before you can go up to the second step, and if you get one wrong, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. And that's quite a good way of kind of integrating it into your lifestyle. I speak about the stairs trick in every revision video I do, but it really works for me. Moving on from quotes now, other really important things to revise for the exam are themes and motifs that feature within the text. So in case you didn't know, a motif is a recurring image or idea within a text. So, you know, the idea of fire or birds, that kind of thing. Try and, as you read through, identify what the common themes and ideas are that prevail from the start to the finish of the text, or whether they start halfway through, or you know, and the difference between those things. So one really good way of getting structural points is to talk about how a key theme or idea is used towards the beginning of the novel and then at the end of a novel, and why that changes there, and at what point, what pivotal moment does it change. What I would do was just make mind maps, so I'd put bird imagery in a little bubble and then just put off all the little examples and Google things as well to see, you know, what certain birds or things represented. That's a really good way of doing it. Okay, we've made it to the big section 3, essay writing. Oh boy. First things first, plan your answer. This is so important. You do have time to plan. In fact, planning saves you time later on. I don't know about you, but I was always told by my teachers that when they were marking scripts from exams and they opened up a paper and they saw someone had written a plan, even if it was crossed out, they would immediately be thinking, this person is going to write a good essay because they've thought it through, they've got a clear plan there, they know what they're doing. Firstly, it helps you because it just helps get your ideas onto paper straight away, and then you kind of know where you're approaching and what your paragraph themes are going to be. And secondly, it helps the examiner immediately think, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. Next up, introductions. Now, starting an essay was always the thing that I found unfathomable. I was like, I can't do it. I don't know how to start. What I realised was that you can literally plan your first 1 or 2 sentences before you even step foot in that exam hall. All you need to do is memorise a kind of phrase or first sentence to get you started. So I would always make a really general statement that showed that I had thoroughly researched the text beforehand. For example, with The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood once wrote a critical response about this novel called Aliens Have Taken the Place of Angels, and in that she described this novel as speculative fiction. That is the perfect way to start an essay. Those first sentences that you can make, which you can tailor to sound quite clever and prove that you've thoroughly researched the novel, are your gateway into a brilliant answer. That kind of gets the ball rolling, gets the ball point rolling, if you know what I mean. And then you, in your introduction, hone in on the question and the details of the question, define the key points and the key areas of the question, only talk about what's in the question title, signpost your answer so that the examiner clearly knows what you're arguing from the get-go. As a more general point for writing the essay, evaluate, don't explain. You don't need to explain what a quote means. The examiner's going to be a very intelligent person. They already know, and it should be obvious anyway why you're using the quote. So don't explain what's going on, don't describe the events, evaluate it. Explain why that's important, why does that happen, so what, why are you using that quote? What does that mean? What does that signal? What's involved in that quote? What literary devices have been used within that quote? You know, you're talking about implications, connotations, denotations, not this means she is not happy. Get it? I think just always keep the question title in mind. Keep using the keywords of the question as well when you're answering. You need to always be introspective and ask yourself, is that particular sentence answering the question, and if it's not, don't write it. And you're going to hate me for saying this, but past papers or practice questions are the way to go. I mean, if you're doing the new linear A-level like I did, there are no past papers really. So ask your teachers for practice questions or come up with your own. That was a really good way of doing it for me, I thought. And lastly, this is quite particular to the module that I did, but my module was called Political Protest in English Literature. So my teacher said, be political. You know, the topic is politics, so be political. We had this one text, it was called Harvest by Jim Crace, which is all about isolationism, and it was written at the time where Euroscepticism was really coming into the political agenda. And so I wrote a whole paragraph in my essay about the politics and the context and the idea of like leaving the EU and that kind of thing, and I feel like that was quite well received. But definitely, you know, bring in the theme, the genre, the main idea of the module as well, because that's, you know, that's why you're studying the text. And so always think about it within that framework, within the parameters of, this is a political text, this is a tragic text. Remember the genre of what you're studying and why it conforms or why it doesn't conform to the genre, and then explain why and how. And finally, the dreaded unseen extract. Now, I say dreaded. This was my favourite bit of the whole paper, and I'll tell you why. So you are viewing the unseen text as part of a module that has a specific title. As I said, mine was called Political Protest or Political Fiction. So you view that unseen extract within the framework of political fiction or tragedy, or like I said before, whatever you're studying, the unseen text is there for a reason, and that's because it is part of the genre that you are studying. Identifying early on, and this is helpful for your exam too, the key terminology, themes, ideas of your module and the genre that you're researching is the key to success, particularly when it comes to the unseen extract. For example, key ideas in political fiction were: who is the oppressor, who is being oppressed, is there a power imbalance, is there corruption or democracy? Identifying the key words, and then when you look at a text, immediately in my head I had almost a checklist. Is there corruption? Is there democracy? Is there an oppressor? You know, all of that kind of thing. You come into it with that lens, and it makes it so much easier to analyze. Oh gosh, that was a tricky one for me to say there. If worse comes to worse, literary devices. That's one thing as well I'd say is important to revise just before the exam, is just go over literary devices. You know, like similes, metaphors, adjectives, nouns, verbs. It sounds so much more clever to say this verb implies rather than this word implies. The examiner does not know you like your teacher does, so you're trying to impress them and you're trying to make them think, hey, this guy knows what's up. So yeah, with the unseen, if in doubt, just revert to the really standard and basic literary devices that you know. Also, last thing to speak about on the unseen extracts is they give you the context, they give you the year. One really important thing in my one was it was Fahrenheit 451, and the context was the year that it was written, which was just after Nazi rule. It was all about book burning, which obviously the Nazis did. So it just tied in. So reading the year that it was published for me was like, this is about the Nazis. That just makes it a lot easier, you know, if you can recognise some kind of context. And they give you quite a long description of the text, so use that to your advantage as well. They've given it to you for a reason. One thing to remember is that every single thing they have given you, they've given you for a reason. So if they tell you where the author was from, that probably has some kind of meaning or subtext. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Sorry that this video has been a bit rambly. I'm quite verbose, loquacious, good word. But yeah, every time I post anything, this question, like, how do I get an A star in English literature? How do I revise English literature comes up, so I thought I'd make a whole video dedicated to it and hopefully unleash some kind of wisdom. I hope it was helpful anyway. So good luck. I hope that your A-level goes well. I hope that this video was useful. I hope that there are some tips and tricks that you learned from this video. Don't forget to give it a like if you liked it, and subscribe down below. If there are ever any other revision videos that you'd like me to make, I would happily do that, especially in the run-up to exams this year. Yeah, so let me know in the comments below what else you'd like to know. If there are any other questions about English literature or studying at Durham, I always answer all of the comments, so head down below to my crotch and I will be down there very shortly. shortly. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much for watching once again. Good luck with your exams, and see you next time. Bye.